Okay, it's after 4 o'clock. Oh, they're right. I see you now. Great. Thanks, Harlan. I don't hear you, and I don't see that you've got your mute on, so I'm wondering if that's working. Can you say something? Okay, we're not getting audio there. Okay, now I see that. I see you muted it now and unmuted it. Can you? But I'm not hearing anyone. Thanks for problem solving. Then we have 3 here in Atlantic. Okay, in Harlan, or excuse me, Council Bluffs. Brian, I'll do attendance now real quick, Council Bluffs. You see, I think 4 people there. Okay, Brian. Is that a yes? You know what, maybe it's on my end. Let me check, because I can't hear Harlan, or I can't hear Council Bluffs either. Let me see if it's on my end. Someone moved it down. Oh, great. Now I can hear you. Wonderful. It was on my end. Sorry.
Did you hear us in Harlan?
I can now. Thank you. Okay, Brian, you're here, right?
Yeah.
Great. Kyle? Michaela? Caitlin?
Here.
Raise your hand so I know which one you are, because I could. There, thank you, Caitlin. Charlotte wasn't going to be here. Marcus? Great, thanks, Marcus. And I got your email, but I haven't responded yet. Sorry, I'll do that on tonight. And John. Great, hi, John. 1, 2, 3, 4 of you there right now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Harlan, we have Michelle.
Yes.
And Amanda?
Emily.
Emily, sorry, Emily. I wish I knew what your true faces look like instead of just the little teeny tiny bodies that I see on the screen. Okay, we're going to get started. Discussing the power of the narrative. Can a personal narrative impact policy? That video clip. I'm not going to show it. That was on part of your before class activity. But what do you have to say about what power there is in telling our stories? Anybody can type up. Does anybody watch Orange is the New Black?
Yeah.
Okay. Did anyone know that it was based on true events or someone's personal story? What stories have you guys heard that have really impacted society? What do you think?
What do you mean?
Well, when someone, the online discussion said this week, our lives are a series of stories, a series of narratives. Each one of our lives are. And when something happens in our lives and we end up telling and sharing that story, and it changes the lives of others, or policies, or traditions, or anything that happens in society, what are some of the stories that you've heard that you know have had an impact on society?
Have you ever seen the movie Girls Don't Cry?
I have not. Anybody else here? Can you share?
It's it's on a true event where there was not night, and she was a girl, but she identified as a boy, and it was in the Midwest.
Oh.
And she ended up getting beaten up and killed.
Oh.
And it started, there's also that Matthew Shepard law that came out, where based on true event, where he got beaten up and I believe burned or something.
Okay.
There's a crazy law like that.
And what do you feel the impact of the sharing of those stories has done for America?
I think it shows people that it's impacted because there's so much judgment and hate behind things that we don't understand, so it's easier to destroy it and belittle it. And it's opened the minds and hearts of people to accept differences in people.
Right. It does affect, other people's stories do affect the way we connect with not only people, but connect with issues that are in our lives. Right. I'm hoping that each one of you actually took the time to read through the Narrative Learning Project and understand what the next few weeks are for you. What questions do you have about that?
My only question was the elder interview question.
Mm-hmm.
By midnight.
Yes, next part.
Do we just come up with the questions that we're going to ask them? Or and how are we just going to submit them like on paper? Or?
Well, you'll just submit a list of questions, and we're going to brainstorm some questions tonight. Now the word has totally escaped me. The brain part here. Excellent. I'm hoping people looked this word up. But I don't have my regular copy of this. I just have the. Oh. I'm so sorry. Oh, X-Men. I hope people looked up that word when they saw this in the narrative interview. But the X-Men and the imminent questions. The X-Men are the outside, exit out, outside questions that we are going to prepare in advance. And the imminent questions are the ones that we prepare in advance will kind of turn into more specific. Like you'll have a question that you're planning on asking, and then when you hear your elder talk and share, you gather his or her voice and words and kind of basically change your already prepared answer into a more specific, appropriate answer that goes right to what the elder is sharing. So yeah, we will prepare some and we'll brainstorm together what because there'll be many common questions that each of us will ask, even though we'll have a wide variety of elders with different life events and themes that they'll be touching on. We're going to brainstorm some basic topics.
This class scares me. I don't know what it is, but I think I realized too that I like things to be straight to the point, you know, like I don't like things to be drug out. And the more and more things are drug out, the less I want to do things, you know, like all these stories that look food and stuff and putting stuff on. Oh, it just makes me crazy.
And it requires a longer connection, a longer focus, and a longer or deeper understanding.
Right.
So, Jimmy, you're hanging in there. That's great. Keep it up. What other questions do any of you have about the Narrative Learning Project? I had never actually done a project like this before. I'd always had narratives be one of my assignments, but the person whom I took over for had this, and I never did get all of the specifics of her project, but when I saw what it was, I thought, oh, that is so good. Because I want to explain the power of this narrative. Sorry, I gotta use the spot here. Ah. Okay. The power of narrative really can change our lives. And we as, well, you as most of you are quite a bit younger than me. And when I look at my own life and I see, I have children who are 24 down to 15. And even the changes between my 24-year-old, well, actually my 21-year-old and my 15-year-old are strikingly amazing to me. The gap between the younger group and anyone 50 and above is growing so much. And in my high school, this is our first year of one-to-one computer program. And we've seen a monumental shift this year in communication because kids are so dependent on their devices. And it's just going to get worse and worse. And when we get so dependent on devices, all of our focus and our thought process goes to what's right in front of us. And we're losing the value of the peripheral, people around us. And unfortunately in America, our elders are pushed to the periphery, whereas in other communities, other countries, they are still held in that circle and valued much more than they tend to be here in America. And so when I saw this project, I thought, oh, this is a great way to use our writing muscle, get that narrative practice, but to tell someone else's story and to tell the story of someone who really we can all learn from. And as a society, we can learn from them. And we want to value them and learn from what they have already gone through. Because regardless of whether or not they had devices, and we do have devices, those differences, life still hasn't, humanity still hasn't changed very much. My 15-year-old daughter tends to think that everything is different than when I was her age. And I'm like, boys are still the same. And everything about it, humanity is still the same. We just have a lot of different.
Boys are still the same.
Yeah.
Stay away from them.
We have a lot of different things to add stress, but stress has always been something. Marriage, it might look different now because the husband and wife or same-sex partners are both working versus one working. The fact that we do have same-sex marriages legalized, that's totally different. But love has always been there. Love is the same. Relationships are the same. So regardless of the changes that we do see, and we can't deny, our elders can teach us so much about life that we sometimes discount.
And they were telling me the other day about how they used to have like one register, and like they had a little sheet that went up like when somebody paid, and the money went up to the
It's kind of like the bank. It's kind of like the bank thing that goes down.
Yeah. There was only like one, they didn't have the cash down there. Where everybody was at, because they didn't do the rob or whatever. But like, wow, how inconvenient that would be.
Things are a lot different. So priorities are a lot different. And I think we need to step back and take a look at what their priorities were and how they got through some of the struggles. And that's one of the great things about this project. What questions do you have logistically, anyone? Everyone got an idea of how to go about contacting one of your local nursing homes?
So we can use like our grandparents or something? Or would you rather not?
I would really rather not. And the reason, two reasons. One, as you saw in as you read in our narrative interviewing, but we want to be as objective as we can as an interviewer. And sometimes when there's that relationship, we already kind of have established roles between, granddaughter, grandfathers, grandmother, whatever. And so there might not be that objective storytelling that there would be with someone that is unknown to us. And the other goal in that is to really honor those who are sitting in a nursing home with me. It really, and that's the learning project part of it. More so, the narrative, the writing, and everything is the writing project. But the true learning part of the project is stretching ourselves beyond our comfort zone. I have a daughter who loves working with kids, and she would say, I hate working with old people. They make me nervous. And I totally understand that. And she actually is a junior at Northwest Missouri State, and she has, for her psychology class, been doing some volunteering at a nursing home down in Maryville. And it's really stretching her. She still says she doesn't really like working with elderly. They still kind of make her nervous. But the things that she has learned, I, as a mom, can see a softening of her heart because of hearing the passions of these older people sharing their lives. And they haven't shared all good things with her. They shared some very difficult things that relationships in their family that aren't healthy, or that my daughter can see are very hurtful and painful to some of the elders. But she's learning so much by connecting with someone of that age group, and she can tell how honored they are because of it. So that's the other aspect of it.
We did use somebody that we know, though, right?
I really would rather you not, but because, like I had mentioned with the grandparents, if you know them really well, I would rather you not. If it's just on the edge, I mean, you just kind of know of them and you somewhat familiar, I'd be okay with that. But again, the idea of being very objective and not having the informant, the one that you're interviewing, be kind of sliding into a role that they think you want them into. And that's the philosophy behind that. Other questions?
I was going to ask if you could do the upside.
Oh, sure, yes. You're not limited to this group at all. So yeah, these are just what I know of in our specific towns with centers. But yeah, you can, you do not have to go to a Council Bluffs one if you're at the Council Bluffs campus, or at the Harlan one if you're at, you can go to anyone. Other questions? All right, so let's look a little bit about a little more basically of the power of narratives and where we see them. What you see in front of you here is these are actually Common Core state standards, but they are anchored in college and career readiness standards. So these are the college and career readiness standards for narrative writing. Develop real or imagined experiences, and we're going to be doing real experiences or events. Engage and orient the reader by setting out a problem, situation, observation, establishing one or multiple points of view, introducing a narrator. You will be the narrator. And characters. The characters might just be your informant. They might be many different people that your informant tells you about. Creating a smooth progression of experiences and events, going from one part of the story to the next. Using narrative techniques like dialogue, pacing, which is just you actually manipulating the time, description, reflection, developing those characters, using a variety of techniques to sequence the events, to put them together so that they build into a cohesive whole, like mystery, suspense, growth, resolution. You will obviously want your resolution to be developed. Using precise words and phrases, telling details in sensory language, meaning you're telling, but you're also showing. And then providing a conclusion that really draws everything together. And there are 4 principal types of writing: description, which you've used some in your writing so far, describe with sensory images, metaphor, and selection of details. Narrative, and that's what we're working on, for your storytelling, or putting together a series of events. Exposition, this is mostly what you've been doing, explaining and interpreting information. And then persuasion, and persuasion is what you're really going to be using in your research paper. So narration is one of the 4 principal types of writing. But even in some of those 4, you see narration can be used. It's a technique or a mode that can be used in expository information. Like when you explain something, you oftentimes have to describe. We have exemplified, we have defined, compared and contrast when we're exposing things. But narration is actually a very good way to expose or explain. So narration, storytelling, the recounting of a series of events in a particular order and delivered by a narrator to a specific audience with a clear purpose in mind. And we're going to brainstorm some purposes and themes that we can really benefit from in learning from our elders. Anecdotes, a few terms to know here. Anecdotes are the narration that you would use in explaining something in your expository text. Oftentimes, and we've had actually a number of examples of this in your model text that we're going to talk about in just a little bit. But they're usually amusing, interesting, minor narrative elements. They don't have a full exposition, rising action, climax, and resolution like a short story or novel would. But they're very short and to the point and have a specific purpose for which they're being shared. And here's just one little example of an anecdote. An old Cherokee is teaching his grandson about life. A fight is going on inside me, he said to the boy. It is a terrible fight, and it is between 2 wolves. One is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. To continue, the other is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The same fight is going on inside of you, and inside every other person too. The grandson thought about it for a minute, and then asked his grandfather, "Which wolf will win?" The old Cherokee simply replied, "The one who feeds." So sometimes this is a short little narrative of just one little tiny story, one little tiny event that happened between an old Cherokee and his grandson. So we call this an anecdote, but it is a form of a narrative. And we see this oftentimes in our expository writing. We saw a number of little anecdotes in our model text. And I want you to be kind of thinking back, which model text that you read did you really see quite a few anecdotes in? Okay, another couple things that to understand the narrative, how you're going to be using your skills here with narrative. There's a dominant mode in which the narrative is used. Short stories are mostly narratives. In novels, obviously, they're narratives, memoirs, nonfiction narratives, like In Cold Blood, the novel. Those are all obvious dominant uses of narrative. But subordinate modes are examples, that's the anecdotes. illustrations, explanations, where you have short little narratives. And those, when you look at the whole piece, you wouldn't say it's narrative, but it's a subordinate little mode that's used within your different writing styles. So we use stories to make a point, explain something, to share an experience. And sharing an experience and learning about that point is really what this project is about. So, actually, I'm going to skip down here. Narrative in Just Walk On By, a Black Man Ponders His Power. Narrative in The Partial Recall. What can you think of from our stories that we've, or model text that we've read so far? Where did you see narrative used? So far, I'm going to skip back to week 3. Why Chinese mothers are superior. Should American citizenship be a birthright? We've read those 2. Any narratives being used in those? Yeah. Okay, like what?
I'm thinking of the girl, I think. Girl.
Oh, the
That
one.
was like, that was pretty much all of it.
It was all dialogue. Yeah, it would be narrative, yes, because even though it was only, I mean, all of those semicolons running that one basic dialogue all the way through to that one and only period at the very end. It was one conversation that the mother was having. And a conversation, one single conversation can be a narrative because it's one little event that's happening. Yeah, that would be an example of it. How about why Chinese mothers are superior? Should American citizenship be a birthright? Any little anecdotes in there?
When she recalled her father telling her that she was trash.
Yeah.
That was there.
Yeah. So an anecdote can be as short as a little remembrance. Yeah. So, one of the reasons I really want to draw on your memory back to what anecdotes and narratives we have used so far is because I really want you to be able to understand and utilize the power of narrative. Because when you jump into reading something that has dialogue in it and is telling a story, you're in the story with them. And it's so much easier to put ourselves in those shoes and understand what's going on because of that experience versus just someone telling us and explaining to us in lecture mode. So that we forward. That was girl. Just Walk On By, a Black Man Ponders His Power to Alter Public Space, page 240. If we look there, in my annotations on this, I have example number 1 on page 240. Then I have on page 241, experience. Example number 3, personal experience. Example number 4, another personal experience. Example number 5, another personal or the experience of others. So he was able to share a number of narratives, little anecdotes as examples to really strengthen and make his point. All the way through that text, he shares little anecdotes, little narratives. And it really helps us to experience that and understand, connect with his point. How about the next one? Sex, lies, and conversation, page 423. What kind of narrative do you see in there?
Which page is that one?
423.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Where do you see narrative used in sex, lies, and conversation on page 423?
Isn't it like right away?
Yeah.
Right when she starts?
Yep, she starts her book in her introduction is to share a story. She jumps you right into a story which connects the reader and the author right away with the topic. So narratives are oftentimes a good introduction book. Let's go to, even this week, let's look in partial recall. Can neuroscience help us rewrite our most traumatic memories? What do you think there? Is narrative used there?
When y'all was talking about our father's experience in hospital care,
Yeah. We had a little anecdote there.
we had that in the last speech when the narrative about it. Was about sister and about maybe.
That way.
When it's talking about sister and stuff.
Right. And here again, actually, it starts with somewhat of an anecdote where one morning every spring for exactly 2 minutes, Israel comes to a stop. Kind of a recurring story in a way. Again, used as a hook here. So we really get the idea about how we use narrative. And I want you to be honing your skills on narrative so that you can use that in so many other types of writing. Okay, so let's go to, since you will be using this for an extended narrative, and a narrative not just of your own, but of someone else's, let's skip to the narrative interviewing and let me know what you thought about. And think back on those of you who have connected on the online discussion. Reiterate some of those points that you made on your online discussion. What did you gather as useful in this entire narrative interview document? Kind of hang in there, focus, focus, focus. Push through. Grit.
Only having my children around constantly really don't kind of makes it a little bit hard. I mean, I really just want to be able to do this and do good, you know, why is it so hard? I don't get it.
What's hard?
All of it, like the whole English stuff. Like to me, you're just like amazing, like British literature, right?
You can do it. Thinking. Okay, what did you find in the narrative interviewing document text that you're going to be using to help you carry out a good interview?
What's your question, Sam?
What from this text, narrative interviewing, did you gather and will be using in your interview with your elder? I'm going to start off by pointing again to the importance of narrative. Right at the opening here, conceptual issues. There is no human experience that cannot be expressed in the form of a narrative. And that's one of the reasons I'm really having you focus on this, not only because you can use that in your other writing, but because narratives, stories, our lives are full of them. And for you to hone your storytelling skills and appreciate a good story and the development of a story, that's a good life skill to work on. What about the interview, the narrative interview itself, the process? Because this is actually, like it says, right here, this particular version of narrative interviewing has not been accessible in English below. Writing about narratives abound in different versions. So this couple, or this Jakelovich and Bauer, have a specific process that they're going through. Versus just going with questions. How do you see this as being different than just what you see on TV when someone asks a question, have that question, and then they hand it over for someone to answer? How is it different? What we're asking you to do here.
Is you're retelling the story,
Okay, who will be retelling the story?
the writer.
Okay, yeah.
Retelling the story of the other.
Right.
Not
So what do you
getting
have?
to references.
What do you have to keep in mind then as you're getting that story, the actual interview process? Bauer is calling it the interview process, the narrative interview, a qualified research method, or qualitative research method. A form of unstructured, in-depth interview with specific features. Conceptually, the idea of narrative interviewing is motivated by a critique of the question-response schema of most interviews. In the question-response mode, the interviewer is imposing structures in a threefold sense: by selecting the theme and topics, by ordering the questions, and by wording the questions in his or her language. How is what I'm asking you to do with these elders different than that typical process of question answer?
Trying to get to talk about the sequence of events.
Okay. In what way? Yep, you're right.
Their experience, whatever it is, the top sequence, we could say that way.
Okay, well, it's definitely important for you guys to put the sequence of events in the proper sequence. That's right.
And I'll not include time with like a date or a year or something possibly, to make it more specific.
Okay, you'll want those specifics, yeah. If you draw your attention to what I'm highlighting here, to elicit a less imposed and therefore more valid rendering of the informant's, or the person interviewing, perspective, the influence of the interviewer should be minimal, and the setting should be arranged to achieve this minimizing of the interviewer's influence. The rules of engagement of the narrative interview restrict the interviewer. The narrative interview goes farther than any other interview method in avoiding pre-structuring the interview. It is the most notable attempt to go beyond the question-answer type of interview. It uses a specific type of everyday communication, namely storytelling, and listening to reach this objective. The narration schema substitutes the question-answer schema that defines most interview situations. The underlying presupposition is that the perspective of the interviewee, the informant, is best revealed in stories where the informant is using his or her own spontaneous language in the narration of events. Although it would be naive to claim that the narration is without structure. A narrative is formally structured. As we point out above, narration follows a self-generating schema. Whoever tells a good story complies with the basic rules of storytelling. If they're going to tell a good story, they're already following that good structure of setting out, the exposition where they set out where they are, when they are, who all is involved. But the idea here, and really if you look at the elicitation technique, this is what I really want you to grasp here. The technique is sensitive to two basic elements of interviewing. And take seriously the idea that language as the medium of exchange is not neutral but constitutes a particular worldview. Appreciating differences in perspectives, which can be either between interviewer and informant or between different informants, is central to the technique. The interviewer is advised to carefully avoid imposing any form of language not used by the informant during the interview. So you're not trying to put words into their mouth. You're really listening. And this, it actually requires you to really do an exerted, you need to really be good listeners, more so than you probably ever are, because I want you to really step out of influencing them and totally listen to their stories, gather them, and be prepared with some X-Men questions, being prepared in advance, but be able to listen to them so well that you can use what you've prepared and slip it right into their language and ask questions that come naturally as a result of listening to them. So it's not just answer this question and get that answer, answer this question, get that answer. You really want to listen to their storytelling, because that's part of the learning. So as you can see in the table here, preparation, exploring the field, which we're going to explore tonight, what kinds of themes you guys are interested in learning about, things that you will endure, go through, struggle with, experience in your lives, that you can benefit from some wisdom from someone who's already been there. Then formulating the X-Men questions, the prepared questions that you can kind of already foresee as being logical in that situation. Formulating initial topic for narration. So maybe you decide, I really want to talk to someone about marriage. How do you survive? Maybe you can, maybe you really have a fabulous goal of staying married for 50 years. How would go on? And so when you go to a nursing home and you try to choose someone, arrange for your interview, you can tell the nurse or the person at the front that you would like to talk to somebody who was married a long time. You want to be able to hear their stories. So that is formulating your initial topic for the narration. Then you want to make sure that there are no interruptions when you are doing your interview. And you're only using nonverbal encouragement to continue the storytelling. When they are telling their story, you're, oh yeah, oh, just non-verbally reacting to them, not asking them a lot of questions, and wait for them to get done with their story. And then you can go to the question 3 phase, where you do, well, what happened then? When you did this, what happened then? And save the why questions for the very, very end. Right after you ask some of your more directed questions that you've already prepared, but have slipped them, changed them, revised them subtly to meet the kind of language that your elder was using. So you have the ideas in your head, but you meld those ideas into the language and the ideas that your elder has been using. And they might be very, very similar, but they might need tweaked quite a bit. That's really what, from here, that I wanted you to understand, that we need to step out and really get the true story from your interviewee. Excuse me. Questions on that or comments?
I guess my question would be why stop recording at the very end, I guess?
I didn't hear, why what?
Why stop recording at the very end, and you come up with why questions and,
I actually agree with, if you're saying it would still be valuable to have the why questions on the recording, I totally agree with you. Is that what you were saying?
yeah.
Yeah. And you can, the idea there, that they explain later, and it's very logical, that sometimes, the interviewee may think, that's going deeper into someone's personal life, their lives. And so maybe they'll give you some deeper, more connected personal information if they're not being interviewed, not being recorded. But that's definitely up to you and the interviewee. They may be totally fine with it. But that's kind of the theory behind that. But I think it's very valuable to have that recorded for your own purposes if they would allow that. Good question. Other questions? Yeah, you can, and there are many ways to do that, and I want your input on this. Actually, right now, I am recording this particular class. I'm using Google Hangout Air, which is fabulous. It'll upload to my YouTube automatically. You can use QuickTime. You can do it on your phone. There's a lot of video apps that you probably have on your own personal computers. You can get you can get an old-time recorder if you want, if you have that around. What other ideas do you have for recording the interview?
I would say that with recording people, like you said, a lot of people get uncomfortable with being recording. So trying to find the or not try to use very saving. So I normally use my headset, attach my headphones, just a little white thing, so it's not very noticeable, so they can forget that it's there.
Okay, yeah.
And it's a lot more.
Right. That's a good idea. But I should remind everyone that they need permission, that they need to say, is it okay if I record this so that I can get your exact words down? And then they're going to be okay with that. But yeah, if you can do it as least intrusive as you can, that's good. Actually, on your computer, there are oftentimes, if you're going to record on your laptop, you can put the app on, start it, and then move another window in front of it so they don't see that they're being recorded. That's one way to do it. Other ideas?
Isn't that illegal to record on the guidelines?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You wouldn't want to do that.
No, I thought that's what you just said. If you couldn't,
No, that you have to have their permission.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you definitely have to have their permission. So if they are not willing, when you arrange for the meeting, at that time you want to say, I do need to record it. Is that okay? And then if they say, oh no, then say, oh, well, I would love to hear your story, but I actually do need to have it recorded. Can you think of someone else who might be okay with the recording? And oftentimes you can have the nurse or the basically nurse arrange for someone who they know who've already discussed that they'll be willing to record it. Yeah, but you definitely have to have some information. Any other ideas that you can put out there? I mean, iPhones, minis, iPads, all that kind of stuff you could use.
I do have I know that you said it doesn't necessarily have to be a nursing or stuff like that. But people that you don't know. I myself, I go to the casino a lot, and there's normally elderly people that are doing betting spots, and they love talking.
Yeah.
They will get there and talk to you like 2 hours, talking everything.
I would be okay with that. And I would, that's kind of a neat frame that you could use for your story. And we'll talk more about narrative frames next week. But yeah, that might actually be a really interesting narrative frame within which to tell the story. Other ideas or questions? Okay, let's take a break. We'll come back at 5. Oh, what time is it? Actually, I was hoping I could get you up here early today. So we'll come back at 5, and we will watch just a little fun clip from Kurt Vonnegut on the shape of stories, and then we'll see another little clip about memories, because oftentimes, obviously, the older we get, the less likely we are to remember things accurately. But I want you to just consider how accurate all of our stories are, and how what we do remember is affected by so many different things. So I'll be back at 5. Oh, yeah. Oh, no.
I'm here, but you're kind of not, but I'm not understanding. I'm not comprehending. And is that, do you think that's because of the episode, or because of it's the girl, it's a combination? I did not know if you want to say that. That one, yeah. Well, my daughter, my neighbor's son, she's got 2. Can't take anything. No, I can't use Tylenol, and that's not a good thing. It is good. No, that's for sure. It's so cold out today.
Terrible.
Oh, and so, like, our online discussions and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
those are due Wednesday?
Yes.
Okay. And then everything else online is due on Wednesday, but today will come in, or before.
Yes. Yeah. Like
Today, our online discussions due.
Yeah, so everything that's the before class is due Wednesday before class. Poster discussion, field reading. And then the schedule and conduct your interview like every if I just edited because I wanted to keep that up there. In front of you. And I have not, I need to tell you this. I have not graded the revisions yet.
It drives me nuts on that, Google Docs, because I don't have much time, I'm just using it like, hands out, or like, just, pauses everything. You can't do anything.
Actually, you can turn on, you can do an offline, you can go into your
Really?
settings in Google or in Chrome,
I have so much less trouble, because if you have.
and then it'll sync.
Oh my God, it's driving me nuts. It was like every time, like every time I would type something, it wasn't, it would stop. And I'm like, what is this?
Well, actually, settings.
You can do it all while I can do it. Because I actually copied and pasted it, and it's not from like this word pad or notepad or whatever. Just because I could actually do it. So.
I know that it's here.
But now you know. Yes.
I don't know, I've only heard from two.
So that much I can tell you kind of slow that we actually wanted to.
Not remember, might have to, Google and find out how to set offline so that it syncs.
Pretty sure. Services. Then I know, especially I have the children, and CCC, they also do this about ignorance as much.
Using Google search on that, but you definitely can get it set up so that you can continue typing offline.
Actually, we're going to get news, which walking to freeze out with sun. Oh, we're just thinking it's good. It's cold outside. So you just go like the Boy Scouts and creating.
Okay, 5 o'clock. I'll ask that you, I'm going to put my mute on. I'll ask that you guys, Harlan, put your mute on and watch our Kirk Vonnegut on the shapes of stories. And a fun little 4 minutes, really emphasizing that every story has a natural shape to it. And when someone tells a good story, they don't always have to really think about why it's good, but when we do think about it, it's because it has that familiar shape to it. So I'm going to mute us. You guys watch on your computers, and come back on in about 5 minutes.
Style.
Has created a body of work of startling eccentricity and universal appeal. His singular view of the world applies not just to his stories and characters, but to some of his theories as well.
Well, there's no reason why the simple shapes of stories can't be fed into computers. They are beautiful shapes. This is the GI axis, good fortune, ill fortune. Sickness and poverty down here, wealth and boisterous good health up there. Here's the very middle. Now, this is the BE axis. B stands for beginning. E stands for electricity. Now, this is an exercise in relativity, really. The shape of the curves is what matters and not their origin. So we'll start a little above average. Is why get a depressing person? We'll start. The whole thing, we call this story Man and Hole, but it needs to be about a man, and it needs to be about somebody getting into a hole. But it's a good way to remember. Somebody gets into trouble, gets out of it again. People love that story. They never get sick of it. All right, not copyrighted. Another story is also a beautiful curve and easily fed into a computer. Called Boy Gets Girl, but it needn't be that. Just a way to remember it. Start on an average day, average person, not expecting anything to happen a day like any other. Find something wonderful. Just love it. Oh, God damn it. Got it back again. People like that. Now, these are beautiful curves, and this gets a little complicated. As computers can now play chess, so I don't know why they can't digest this very difficult curve I'm going to draw for you now. And it so happens that this is the most popular story in our civilization, Western civilization. We love to hear this story. Every time it's retold, somebody makes another $1 million. You're welcome to do it. Now, surprisingly enough, I'd say it's depressing. You know, people don't like stories about below average days and people. But we're going to start way down here. Worse than that, who is so low? It's a little girl. What's happened? Her mother has died. Her father has remarried a vile-tempered, ugly woman with two nasty daughters, big daughters. You've heard it. See? Anyway, there's a party at the palace that night. She can't go. She has to help everybody else get ready. She has to stay home. Not that she thinks lower, no. She's a staunch little girl, and she has had the maximum waxen fate, which is the loss of her mother. She can't go any lower than that. Okay, so the fairy godmother comes. Gives her shoes, gives her stocking, gives her mascara. Gives her a means of transportation, goes to the party, dances with the prince, has a swell time. Boring, 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 boring. Now there's a slight inclination to that line as I've drawn it because it takes perhaps 20 seconds, 30 seconds for her grandfather's clock to strike 12. Does she wind up at the same level? Of course not. She will remember that dance for the rest of her life. Now, she poops along on this level till the prince comes to shoe fetch. She achieves off-scale happiness.
Okay, off-scale happiness, the shape of stories. We all kind of knew the stories that he was talking about, and they all did have a similar shape, and we know that similar shape. We know that in our own lives too. So I want you to keep in mind that obviously you're going to have to create that shape in your retelling of someone else's story, but to really listen for the shape of that story and what all is included in there from your elder. And I want to also just put in our minds a perspective as we're listening to our elders, to know that their lives, like ours, are tainted by so many different things. And just to know that and have that in the back of my mind, I think is really important. For instance, Emily Dickinson, famous American poet. I love what she says here. Tell the truth, but tell it slang. Success is in circuit lies. Too bright for our infirm delight, the truth's superb surprise. As lightning to the children ears with exclamation kind, the truth must dazzle gradually for every man be blind. Read that again. Read that to yourself, and then tell me how this relates to life stories.
Sure, you can look at slowly and come up with $2
Okay. Good. We can hitchhike on that. We can take that a little bit further. Add something, maybe a little bit different interpretation and a little bit different. Call it slang.
You don't have to put all the details in it. Sugar coating, just kind of a little, only say the good aspects of that certain issue.
Okay. Good.
That's how I.
So you have to tell it a little bit with not very straightforward like the lightning, because lightning kills, it's true, but being able to slant it, sugarcoat it a little bit, yeah? Anybody else?
When a lot of people sit there and start telling the truth and talking and all of that, they like to embellish it. They get excited with the attention of someone, so then they sit there and something that kind of just happens in a regular way, they make it more exciting, and then that memory sticks. You need to tell it that way.
Yeah. Very good. And that was something that in our back to, how many of your memories are fake? One of the things that was mentioned in there, that retelling something, like you said, John, if the story is embellished, bringing that story up and restating it, retelling it in that way, solidifies in our brain some of that information and puts that into our memory as real. Have any of you actually experienced that? Your memories changing and you realize that they've changed, or someone else has said, whoa, wait a minute, that didn't happen that way.
Yeah. You're a child, you get told these stories when you did when you're a child. And you remember that when you try to tell them, and your parents are like, no, it didn't necessarily happen like that. They're like, no, actually it happened like this. You were too young to kind of remember that. And it's kind of crazy that after being told something, it's free you to actually remember.
Right. Ready?
Like, you listen to the grandpa's story, and then you listen to her and tell them the grandpa's story, and you're like, what? I thought you said it.
Yeah. And I don't remember if I had written this someplace on this. I don't remember where I said this before, but I have a twin sister, and I really do have a hard time recalling things that happened in my past, and I'm not sure why. but my twin sister will have all of these memories, and she spouts up all of these things that we did. I'm like, how are you getting into that? Did we do that? How can you remember that? You don't remember anything. Which I don't know why. She remembers so much, and I somewhat live through her memory. And so my memory is influenced by her storytelling. Okay. Anything else on how many of your memories are fake that you found interesting? And here again, we have narrative. All memory is Mikhail explained as colored with bits of life experiences. When people recall, they are reconstructing, so it doesn't mean it's totally false. It means that they're telling a story about themselves, and they're integrating things they really do remember in detail with things that are generally true. That, in particular, I think, is going to be some of what you're going to experience in meeting with an elder. And I just wanted to plant those seeds that knowing that we're all this way. Sure, the older we get, oftentimes we forget things, and all of you have probably spoken or visited with grandparents or older people that really have, but knowing that and appreciating that about all of us is something that I think we need to remember. And actually, because of that, and as we get down deeper into this particular text, Loftus, who is referred to here, we're actually going to stop now, do the same thing. I'll stop, I'll put mute on, and I would like you to, at your own computers, at your own site, listen to Elizabeth Loftus, I can't remember how to pronounce her name, about the fiction of memory. And again, the reason I really want you to think about these things is just the simple focus on, two simple focuses. One on the fact that you're going to be speaking with elders who oftentimes can forget things and have had so many experiences in their lives that change and alter a little bit some of their memories, but also that we are the same way. And because our lives are full of memories, they are one big series of memories, we need to understand them ourselves. So I'll go ahead and put on the mute. Go ahead and watch The Fiction of Memory. And it actually is 17 minutes long. And as you are watching it, be thinking, I'm going to have you do two things here. Be thinking of different life experiences that you would appreciate benefiting from an elder's point of view and experience from.
It was a yield time. Many witnesses told us they remember seeing a yield time at the end. I'd like to tell you about a legal case that I worked in involving a man named Steve Titus. Titus was a restaurant manager. He was 31 years old. He lived in Seattle, Washington. He was engaged to Gretchen, about to be married. She was the love of his life. And one night, the couple went out for a romantic restaurant meal. They were on their way home, and they were pulled over by a police officer. You see, Titus's car sort of resembled a car that was driven earlier in the evening by a man who raped a female hitchhiker. And Titus kind of resembled that rapist. So the police took a picture of Titus. They put it in a photo lineup. They later showed it to the victim, and she pointed to Titus's photo. She said, "That one's the closest." The police and the prosecution proceeded with a trial, and when Steve Titus was put on trial for rape, the rape victim got on the stand and said, "I'm absolutely positive that's the man." And Titus was convicted. He proclaimed his innocence. His family screamed at the jury. His fiancee collapsed on the floor sobbing, and Titus is taken away to jail. So what would you do at this point? What would you do? Well, Titus lost complete faith in the legal system, and yet he got an idea. He called up the local newspaper. He got the interest of an investigative journalist, and that journalist actually found the real rapist, a man who ultimately confessed to this rape, a man who was thought to have committed 50 rapes in that area, and when this information was given to the judge set Titus free. And really, that's where this case should have ended. It should have been over. Titus should have thought of this as a horrible year, a year of accusation and trial, but over. It didn't end that way. Titus was so bitter. He lost his job. He couldn't get it back. He lost his fiancée. She couldn't put up with his persistent anger. He lost his entire savings, and so he decided to file a lawsuit against the police and others who he felt were responsible for his suffering. And that's when I really started working on this case, trying to figure out how did that victim go from "that one's the closest" to "I'm absolutely positive that's the guy." Well, Titus was consumed with his civil case as he spent every waking moment thinking about it, and just days before he was to have his day in court, he woke up in the morning, doubled over in pain, and died of a stress-related heart attack. He was 35 years old. So I was asked to work on Titus's case because I'm a psychological scientist. I study memory. I've studied memory for decades. And if I meet somebody on an airplane, this happened on the way over to Scotland, if I meet somebody on an airplane and we ask each other, "What do you do? What do you do?" and I say, "I study memory," they usually want to tell me how they have trouble remembering names, or they've got a relative who's got Alzheimer's or some kind of memory problem. But I have to tell them, I don't study when people forget. I study the opposite, when they remember things that didn't happen, or remember things that were different from the way they really were. I study false memories. Unhappily, Steve Titus is not the only person to be convicted based on somebody's false memory. In one project in the United States, information has been gathered on 300 innocent people, 300 defendants who were convicted of crimes they didn't do. They spent 10, 20, 30 years in prison for these crimes, and now DNA testing has proven that they're actually innocent. And when those cases have been analyzed, 3/4 of them are due to faulty memory, faulty eyewitness memory. Well, why? Like the jurors who convicted those innocent people and the jurors who convicted Titus, many people believe that memory works like a recording device. You just record the information, then you call it up and play it back when you want to answer questions or identify images. But decades of work in psychology has shown that this just isn't true. Our memories are constructive. They're reconstructive. Memory works a little bit more like a Wikipedia page. You can go in there and change it, but so can other people. I first started studying this constructive memory process in the 1970s. I did my experiments that involved showing people simulated crimes and accidents and asking them questions about what they remember. In one study, we showed people a simulated accident, and we asked people how fast were the cars going when they hit each other. And we asked other people how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other. And if we asked the leading smash question, the witnesses told us the cars were going faster. And moreover, that leading smash question caused people to be more likely to tell us that they saw broken glass in the accident scene when there wasn't any broken glass at all. In another study, we showed a simulated accident where a car went through an intersection with a stop sign, and if we asked a question that insinuated it was a yield sign, many witnesses told us they remember seeing a yield sign at the intersection, not a stop sign. And you might be thinking, well, you know, these are filmed events, they're not particularly stressful. Would the same kind of mistakes be made with a really stressful event? In a study we published just a few months ago, we have an answer to this question. Because what was unusual about this study is we arranged for people to have a very stressful experience. The subjects in this study were members of the U.S. military who were undergoing a harrowing training exercise to teach them what it's going to be like for them if they are ever captured as prisoners of war. And as part of this training exercise, these soldiers are interrogated in an aggressive, hostile, physically abusive fashion for 30 minutes. And later on, they have to try to identify the person who conducted that interrogation. And when we feed them suggestive information that insinuates it's a different person, many of them misidentify their interrogator, often identifying someone who doesn't even remotely resemble the real interrogator. And so what these studies are showing is that when you feed people misinformation about some experience that they may have had, you can distort or contaminate or change their memory. Well, out there in the real world, misinformation is everywhere. We get misinformation not only if we're questioned in a leading way, but if we talk to other witnesses who might consciously or inadvertently feed us some erroneous information, or if we see media coverage about some event we might have experienced. All of these provide the opportunity for this kind of contamination of our memory. In the 1990s, we began to see an even more extreme kind of memory problem. Some patients were going into therapy with one problem, maybe they had depression, eating disorder, and they were coming out of therapy with a different problem. Extreme memories for horrific brutalization, sometimes in satanic rituals, sometimes involving really bizarre and unusual elements. One woman came out of psychotherapy believing that she endured years of ritualistic abuse, where she was forced into a pregnancy and that the baby was cut from her belly. But there were no physical scars or any kind of physical evidence that could have supported her story. And when I began looking into these cases, I was wondering, where do these bizarre memories come from? And what I found is that most of these situations involved some particular form of psychotherapy. And so I asked, were some of the things going on in this psychotherapy, like the imagination exercises, or dream interpretation, or in some cases hypnosis, or in some cases exposure to false information, were these leading these patients to develop these very bizarre, unlikely memories? And I designed some experiments to...
We're actually going to stop for that. Okay, I am actually going to stop you at 10 minutes. If you're about, Harlan and Council, if you're about at 10 minutes, you can go ahead and stop. And what I really wanted, and it's a very interesting study that she's going to be telling about, so I encourage you to watch the rest of it sometime. But what I really wanted to touch base on, again, the perspective that our lives are influenced by those around us. Even our stories are influenced by the stories of other people. But here, the direct connection that I want you to pick up on from what she was just saying was that we as interviewers, you as interviewers of your elders, the way you pose questions can change their perspective. It can create a bias or a different position that they take because of the way we pose our questions. So I want you to really be careful to listen so much more than you talk with your elder and really just hear their natural stories come with some very basic questions. So I want us to brainstorm now. On our class document here, where it says brainstorm, I want some X-minute questions where we prepare. The imminent questions will come from your prepared questions when you can tell, oh, that kind of goes toward what question I was already going to ask, but you word it in the way that your elder has been already talking about. And then we've already talked about types of interview recordings and just the importance of listening. So let's do some brainstorming here. Let me spread these out. Okay, storyteller, informant ideas. Someone, Reagan, was it you that was talking about Elkhorn? Going to Elkhorn? Okay, so what I'd like you to do, all of you can jump on a computer here. All you need to do on this particular, it's called a Padlet, but it's kind of like a bulletin board. You just double click and up will come a little window for you to type in. But, and then you can move it up. I'll show you. Then you can move it. I gotta type in it first. Okay, then you can move it to wherever you want here. Storyteller, informant ideas, like John's idea. Go ahead and put that down. If you kind of know which nursing home you want to go to, put that down here. Event ideas, life events. What kind of events, struggles, experiences do you know? Maybe you're already struggling with something or going through something that you'd like some advice on or foresee happening in your life in the near future. What are some of those events that you might be able to talk with an elder about? Put those under event ideas. Theme ideas, struggles, hope, relationships, love, those types of children, yes, raising children. Put that down. How do I put it on? Double click and up will come a window. Questions that you have that you feel would be good prepared questions that are kind of general in nature about specific themes. And then what are you concerned about? Are you nervous about anything? Put those under this concerns of yours. Okay, someone with children, is that for a storyteller? Yeah. Okay, someone with children? That's for a storyteller idea? I'm going to move some of these along. Okay, what's your name? Yeah. Oh, event. Now I just moved someone's, how they met their significant other. Is that an event or a question?
I don't know, question, yeah. But marriage would be event, correct?
Actually, event and theme are very similar. There are some actual events that really don't have a theme to them, but some events like marriage can also be a theme. Like working, that can be a theme. get surviving. You add a few here. Yes, some of these experience war. Yes. Oh, a teacher, right?
Is the concern/fear section our concerns or fears or their concerns or fears?
You, thank you for asking. Your concerns and fears. What are you nervous about or have questions about or not sure about with this project?
Oh, about the project, not with the interview.
Or the interview, yeah. If you're nervous about something or you're concerned that something is, you're not sure how to do it or that it might not go well, those kinds of things there. Concerns or fears of, and actually I didn't think about that, but concerns and fears of the interviewer could definitely go in here and invent and theme ideas.
Will this all be saved so we can get into it later?
Will it what?
This still be on here so we can get into it later?
Yes, definitely. So we're brainstorming, getting some question. You may put one question up here, and you may end up using all of the questions that you see here for what you hand in. But kind of choose. What I want you to do for Friday night is continue brainstorming, but decide kind of on a type of event that you want to, or theme that you want to really garner some good wisdom from this elder. And then with that, you can contact the nursing home, talk with one of the nurses and say, this is kind of really what I want to what I want to get a narrative about and really be able to talk with one of your residents about. Can you give me a good resident that you know would be a good interviewer? Someone that would be willing to share about this, and they'll know who those residents are that are willing to share and that have the great stories that that have gone through whatever it is that you're looking to experience through their eyes. Let's address some of these concerns. Time frame. You can, I'm not exactly sure which this addresses. Time frame, you need to have your interview done by the 25th. So there isn't, if you look at, I don't remember if I have weeks that I've done yet. There is no reading or anything for next week. It's just conducting your interview and the exercise involved. So no reading or anything this week. So you have some extra time there. But time frame of the interview, that is up to you. You can, if you want to limit it to half an hour, you can definitely put that out there when you're scheduling it and say, I really only have half an hour. But I would love to get whatever story you have for me, stories you have for me in that half hour, so they kind of know. If you're willing to spend, as much time as you feel that the elder can give, wonderful. There's no time limit there that I'm imposing. Did I answer whoever that question, whoever gave that concern? Did I answer that well enough? Yeah. Work schedule, time management. I'm not exactly sure about that either. Can someone be a little more specific on that? Time management of getting it done, I'm assuming. Let's look at week 7. Too many tabs open here. Next week, we're going to be discussing narrative. You're going to be sharing how your narrative interviews went. We're going to be discussing techniques of your narrative writing, and your narrative planning is due on that Wednesday. Actually, yeah, it's going to need to, because we have a writer's workshop. So really, we're going to just look at narrative techniques, and you'll get writing time during class next week. So come with your kind of your notes so that you can really utilize that writing time. We'll have at least an hour for a writer's workshop to get from your notes to your rough draft. Then answer this one. Enough work schedule, time management. Okay. What if during the interview, the interviewee asks questions of my personal input? If you are willing to share something, if they're just wanting to find out about you, that's totally up to you. If the input is in relation to reaction to the story during the storytelling, I would gently refuse to answer it in a way like, I would rather you just keep telling me about your story. What else can you remember about that? How did that happen? Going back to the how did that happen, open-ended, pushing them forward type responses, rather than getting your reaction to what they're saying. Just let them tell the entire story so you can see that actual shape. Any questions? I didn't get you out early. I was hoping I'd get you out about 5 to 10 minutes, at least 5 to 10 minutes early. Oh, a question, sir.
So we need to have this done by next Wednesday, correct, interview?
Right.
Or is there a sooner time?
No, have your interview with your notes by next Wednesday.
Okay.
Yep. And send me your prepared questions Friday, and I will probably, if you haven't already, and actually I should request that you put your date that you've scheduled your interview on there. And if you haven't done your interview by Friday, I might be able to add some more questions for you, but I want you to prepare in advance for those questions. So what is your theme? And what are your questions, and what date do you have scheduled?
And let's do it Friday.
Friday. Other questions? All right. Have fun with that. I hope that you really are able to gain a great perspective and have a really learning time with your other.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I always